For several years, Bashar Kirma has been facilitating a youth-driven spiritual formation group called Silent Saints. They're not scholars, but average people tackling some of life's most complex questions. It's a call to rise above anger, depression, uncertainty, and negativity in life. It's a call to find genuine peace and happiness. It's a call to change the world. Here is Silent Saints.
Imagine a world that tolerates the imperfections of human beings. Imagine a world that loves a stranger, makes friends from enemies. Imagine a world that treats a human being with respect and not as targets, toys, or objects. Imagine our world becoming this world. You probably heard that you cannot change the world, but we're here to tell you, you can. This show is not about how to become rich in 5 minutes. This show involves real people, people that have changed their lives for the betterment of humanity. We are the Silent Saints. We're not silent in our words. We're not silent in our actions. We're here for the betterment of the world. We are here to present questions, to present evidence, to look for whatever that we can answer in order to reach a better version of ourselves, in order to reach a better world today. Questions like, what is the purpose of life? Does God exist? Is there heaven or hell? How do we handle anger? Relationships? Things of all sorts. All done in a judgment-free environment. And we welcome you. And we ask you to join us as we look at these questions and answer them. Together, we can change the world. Welcome to this episode of the Silent Saints. As mentioned earlier, we are here to answer questions in a judgment-free environment, and we welcome you to that. In this episode, we're going to look at the question, and we're going to start with this question of what is the purpose of life. Today we have with us Rachel, Alvin, Chris, Bridget, Jeremy, and I'm Bashar. So, let me ask you guys this. Why is it important to start with the purpose of life? Why is it important for us, for you, to know what the purpose of life is?
I ask myself this question all the time. I think that as humans, we all have these inclinations, and we're drawn to love and to keep ourselves busy, to be successful, to strive for certain goals in life. And what is this drive that we have? What's the purpose of it? If there's no purpose, then it's pretty much meaningless, and that can leave you ultimately feeling lonely or confused.
Mm-hmm. I feel that if we don't know what the purpose of life is, we're not gonna have any drive to do anything at all. Like, if I didn't know what the purpose of life was, I wouldn't want to go out and get a job. I wouldn't want to, try to raise a family. I wouldn't want to, I'm not trying to say be successful, but just be, happy.
Without knowing what our purpose actually is, there's nothing to do. We would be just bored. So I feel like knowing what the purpose of life is somewhat of like a goal on what we're going to get to in our future at the same time.
Almost like a long-term goal that we spend our life working for. Well, I feel like the purpose of life is to set goals for yourself, to figure out who you are day by day. So, I mean, you got to find the purpose of life to set a goal for yourself. You have to find, you have to make your mark. So you have to find what your purpose is somewhat.
And everybody does have a different purpose. Every single person has a different set of goals and has a different set of life. And it's just about finding it. It's about knowing yourself to actually find and overcome these goals.
Exactly. And from what you're saying, it seems, as you're saying, that there is a purpose to everyone. And we're here to see if there is a bigger purpose that can envelop all of us. So before the show, you guys had an opportunity to ask people what the purpose of life is. What'd you get?
I mean, I got all kinds of answers. I got to make money, to be happy, to have a family. Some people told me to leave a legacy. That was a big one too. And somebody told me it was to love each other. So I thought that's really strong, because it's weird to just love somebody that you don't know. So, I mean,
I was told to live life to the fullest. Another person also had told me to raise a family, to live for his parents, to, just live for other people and do things that for them.
And one thing that I did forget to mention is someone told me that you ultimately live for others. So it's like, again, how do you live for others unless you kind of find a purpose to live for others? So,
How about you, Alvin? What'd you get?
I got a lot of different answers. Some people told me that they feel the purpose of life is to, raise a family, leave behind a legacy. Other people told me that success, basically just to be, top dog, to have power and to have money. Mostly answers like that.
Okay. Rachel?
I got a variation of pretty much what everyone's been saying, but one that really struck a chord with me was someone said that the purpose was to make mistakes that will teach you to be better, and I thought that was really interesting because it placed an emphasis on suffering. So I liked that.
I got one different answer that's stood out to me. This answer was to turn heads. And I said, what does that mean, to turn heads? And they said, well, when you're walking down the street, are people looking at you? And then I thought, sure, I'm sure they are. And then he said, well, what are they thinking about when they're looking at you? So I guess to turn heads would be to the purpose of life.
So Bashar, what is the purpose of life?
Okay, it's easy for us to say the answer in brief or short statement, things like that. But I think it's better if we were to break down this question. So for example, if we were to look at the purpose of life, or in smaller versions, to dissect it and go, what is the purpose of anything? So what is the purpose of eating? What is the purpose of working out? What is the purpose of going to work? What is the purpose of taking showers? Things like that. So I'll ask you guys this question to dissect the bigger question. What do you guys think? What is the purpose of eating, showering, going to work, going to school, working out? What do you think? Bridget, what do you think?
well, I feel like you do these things to make an impression, and not to show off or anything like that, but I mean, my goal is to succeed, and you only make a first impression one time, so that would be my purpose, to do all this stuff, my reason.
Right. Why do you, Chris, why do you do these things?
Well, I feel like these are just basic necessities that we need in our everyday life. We need to work, we need to eat, we need to shower. And, you know, this is just a necessity that we need in our everyday life.
I think also it can be a pleasurable thing. Obviously you can't overdo it, but eating, that brings pleasure. I mean, celebrations are always with food. Showering, it always feels good to get clean, and sleeping, it's, you know, you feel good after a nice nap or a good night's sleep. So pleasure is definitely a reason too.
Sure. Alvin, why do you do these things?
Me, personally, I work so I could have money to so I could eat, and so I could shower, and so I could go to school and get an education. Basically, without, you know, the most important thing, in my opinion, is first of all to have a job so you can do all of the above. You know, it's the truth.
Yeah, very good. Jeremy?
Could be like self-fulfillment, makes yourself feel better. When you work and you get a good job done, you feel good about yourself. When you get good grades on your tests, you feel good about yourself. When you get to prepare yourself a good meal, you can always feel good about yourself. I think it's about self-fulfillment. When you get to do these everyday activities on a daily basis, it's always good. Always a good feeling.
You're actually leading us to the next point. We won't be able to find a common denominator in asking why do we do these things. But let's look at the reverse of that. If we don't do these things, what happens to you if you don't eat? What happens if you don't work out, if you don't go to work, or if you don't shower, for example? What happens?
I would say it's the exact opposite. You don't get that self-fulfillment. You don't feel good about yourself. You might feel lazy. You might get held back. You might not be able to give everything your 100% if you're not going out there and working, and you're not going out there and going to school. I feel like you're actually holding yourself back when you decide to hide under a rock and stay at home.
Well, I personally wouldn't mind not going to school. But without everything, honestly, like, you're gonna stink if you don't shower.
Yeah.
You're gonna be hungry if you don't eat. Like, you need these things, like I said earlier, as a necessity in your life. I mean, without them, even without school, you need your education to build you in your future. Without all of these things, it's not good for you.
Mm-hmm. Alvin, you mentioned, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Rachel. Alvin, you mentioned work.
Yes.
If you don't work, what happens?
If I didn't work, I could tell you right now, if I didn't work, I wouldn't be able to put gas in my car.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I wouldn't be able to go to school. I wouldn't be able to go get food. I wouldn't be able to pay the bills for the house. Therefore, I wouldn't be able to shower. You know, water bill would probably be the first one to go off. But I mean, it's just, for me personally, it basically all starts off at work. You know, if you don't have a job, you almost don't have anything.
It's almost, and from your perspective, it's almost the purpose of life is to work.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna see. Maybe if that's what it is, if that's where the evidence lead us, then that's where we're gonna take it. Let's carry it further. Rachel, you were gonna say?
Yeah, I was gonna say, going off of what Chris said, initially the idea of not working and not going to school sounds really good. But because as humans, our natural instinct is to want to be lazy. Mm-hmm. But really, as humans, that may be our instinct, but we're naturally happier when we're kept busy and we're doing something. So if we're sitting at home all day, regardless, even if I had the money, even if I didn't need to work, you can't just sit home. It's not in us. That's not our innate. Yeah, I mean.
Well, maybe you guys can't. I don't know about you guys, but
you say that, but 3, 4, 5 months, years down the road, you're not going to be, sitting at home, and especially as men, it's like you're raised to be the breadwinner, to provide, and it's not. It hurts your pride to sit there and not be doing something that.
Wow, she's speaking on our behalf. She really is. Although I gotta tell you.
Well, I've heard that a number of times.
Yes. No, I just had a friend of mine who retired. Friend in age, he just retired. He's an older gentleman who we became good friends through work, and I should say a colleague who just retired, and maybe a couple months ago, and he tells me, he's like, I'm bored, I don't know what to do, and it is amazing. It's true. From that aspect, we lose fulfillment. Let's look at it even deeper on an emotional level. If I didn't eat, how do I feel? If you didn't eat,
hungry,
bad mood,
you'd be in a bad mood. Okay.
It's like the only thing that you can think about. It's like putting a smoke screen up in your eyes, and you have to just, once you eat, that smoke screen is cleared away, and you're finally fulfilled.
Right. So something becomes lacking when we don't eat. Let's look at when we don't shower. When you don't shower, what happens?
Bad
how do you
hygiene.
feel?
Dirty.
You feel dirty.
Dirty.
You can't sleep right.
And what does it do to your social life?
Lose friends.
It diminishes.
Diminishes very quickly. And when you don't have friends, how does that feel?
Lonely.
Sad. Depressing.
Look at it from this aspect. If I'm not working, I have to provide for my family. If I'm not providing for my family, what happens to me?
They would get sick.
They're going to be out on the street. So how am I going to feel at that point in time? I'm pretty sure I can speak for myself in this case and say, I'm going to feel pretty terrible, pretty sad, pretty depressed. If we actually look at it, there's a common denominator. If we don't do things, if we're not accomplishing or fulfilling our needs and our necessities, that common denominator seems to be sadness, seems to be unfulfillment, seems to be maybe even borderline depression to a certain extent. So if we are doing things to avoid that, what's the opposite of that? What's the opposite of being sad?
Being happy.
Happiness.
Being happy. Look at it this way. If you eat, how are you going to feel? Fulfilled? Filled? Full? Energized? Does that make you feel happy? The reality is yes. How about when you're working?
You make a good sale.
You're moving around,
you're
running
up.
around,
You're
helping
content.
customers.
You feel like you're accomplishing
No
matter
something.
what.
You're
Yeah,
accomplishing.
so happy.
At the end of the day or the week or 2 weeks or month, you're getting your paycheck. Your paycheck allows you to provide for the family. How does that feel? Does
Makes
it feel
you
sad?
happy.
Very
Makes you feel good.
Accomplished.
Makes you feel good.
Like
Accomplished.
you did something.
It makes you feel happy. It's if we look at the opposite of the common denominator, if we don't do something, the reality is the purpose of us doing anything is to reach happiness. Then the next logical question has to be is why are there so many people unhappy in the world? I'm sure you guys come across people in your daily life that are unhappy. I'll give you guys an example. Today I was driving and I looked around and the car next to me on my left side, the car next to me on my right side, and I'm looking at the people and it's very hard to see them smiling. It's very hard to look at them and go, wow, this person is genuinely happy. This person is, from the essence, the question of are they fulfilling the purpose of life, that being happiness. I look at them and I go, this person is not. So the questions that we are looking at in the next step is, why are there so many people unhappy? And in fact, before we look at the answer to this question, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break, and in this break, we're going to ask you to take a moment before we come back and answer the question honestly, judgment-free, you and your own thought. Are you happy? We'll look at these and much more when we come back. Welcome back. Before the break, we were looking at the question of what is the purpose of life? And we broke it down into smaller segments to reach an answer based on the evidence presented. And we reached that the answer is happiness. And before the break, we asked you the question to answer whether you are happy or not in your life. In the Silent Saints show, we're going to look at many times to see how to answer these questions on a personal level. So be with us. That being said, the next question to you guys is, describe a time when you were unhappy.
Well, I can honestly say when I was unhappy, no matter what anybody could have done for me, I was always unhappy. It was because I was unhappy with myself at the point I was in my life. And you just got to work through it. You got to push. Like, you got to just push yourself. So.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Can I ask you what happened?
What happened?
If it's okay.
That's fine. I graduated high school and I didn't want to go to college, and nobody in my family was happy. I mean, I come from a family of like everybody is very successful and they all have degrees, and I mean, not all of them, but everybody's very successful. They said, we came to America so you can go to school. We did this so you can go to school. And I'm like, but I don't want to go to school. So, I didn't want to go to school and I didn't. So for a while, I had a few people unhappy with me, and I didn't want them to look at me and feel disappointment. Like, I didn't want them to be disappointed in me. So that made me unhappy. But, I learned that it doesn't get you anywhere. So you take that that energy and work towards the positive, and I'm almost where I'm at. I mean, I'm almost where I want to be. So I'm happy I stuck with it.
Can I ask you what, during the time that you were unhappy, what did you turn to be happy?
I mean, I didn't really turn to anything, like, but that was it. It was nothing. I mean, I had a few friends that, I've always had great friends, but I had a few that would just put fuel to the fire, like, you know, like, well, that's not what you want to do. That's not what, you know, whatever, that kind of stuff. And it's just negative, very negative. And again, it doesn't get you anywhere.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Alan?
For me, there was a time when I was, I want to say, you know, I guess I could say unhappy with myself or unhappy with where I was at that time. It was a few years ago. You know, I graduated from high school. I went to college for, you know, I wanted to major in one thing. I went to college for a couple semesters, then I stopped. And I kept switching majors. And I had a job at that time, and I basically quit my job so that I could have more time for school. But in reality, I quit my job so I could have more time for school, kind of, and more time for the girl that I was dating at the time. You know, so then I was out of a job. I did have money saved up to, you know, do what I wanted for a decent amount of time. But, you know, when me and the girl broke up, I was single. I didn't have a job. I didn't really have anything to wake up for in the morning. So I almost got bored, almost like not so bored to almost like feel depressed of boredom, but just like I always wanted to find something to do. So I would go out to bars and clubs and, you know, party with girls and the wrong people, and basically it
all felt good.
It felt good, but like I didn't want to do it, but like it was at the point where like I knew I didn't want to do it, but like I just did it because I liked it, but I didn't want to. Like just partying and drinking and like until I got to the point where I was like, I need to find a job because I need to get my life back together. You know, so finally I found a pretty good job of where I'm comfortable at for now, a nice job, you know, good hours, full time. It keeps me awake. Keeps me, you know, I got to wake up at this time. Keeps me responsible.
So now we see why you mentioned the job.
Yeah, I
several
love
times.
jobs.
Okay, that's good.
I love jobs.
That's good. Yeah. Rachel?
I think the time in my life when I was the least happy was around the same time as Alvin and Bridget, and I think that's such a vulnerable part of adolescence because you're leaving a life where everything is chosen for you and you're entering this world where no one holds your hand anymore, no one tells you what to do. And I was in a relationship, a serious relationship, all throughout high school. And as I was leaving high school, my boyfriend and I broke up. And while some people might look at that and think that it's just something childish, it was really serious to me at the time. You know, I had made this one person my whole world. I had placed my whole happiness in this one person. You know, I didn't care to have friends. I had him. When I lost him, I had lost everything. And I think it was the opposite, you know, with you, Alvin. I think for me, I isolated myself from the world. I shut myself out from my family, from my friends, whatever was left of that. And I placed my happiness on movies and music. And, you know, I was alone and I contemplated suicide. And, you know, what would make me feel good in this moment? Not living. That's, you know, just finding all these little niches and ways to numb the pain. And, you know, it didn't work, and it took a long time for me to get out of that rut that I was in. So.
Thank you for sharing. Jeremy. And by the way, you can say, I don't feel like sharing. Same thing, Chris. I mean, this is, go ahead.
I don't really know.
That's okay.
You always been happy.
Not really. I mean,
Well, looking at Jeremy every day, we're like, hey, he's got a special smiles on his face all the time, doesn't he?
I guess there's been times in my life where I found myself truly unhappy, and I guess that's when I realized that I can't change something. When something is happening that I have no power over. I feel like that right there has been the biggest issue with me, with finding happiness and becoming unhappy, is when I try to put myself and try to put my foot in the door in situations that might have already been broken up, and I can't pull the pieces back together. I feel like I try to. What I actually learned how to get out of that was by accepting it and by saying it happened for a reason. Maybe whatever it was that I was unhappy with happened for a reason, and I actually almost had to turn my back to it and just forget about it and not worry about it, as what a lot of people tend to do, is put their worries and their happiness into one object and then stick with it. They stick with it, and then it keeps blurring their vision and keep weighing them down, when really if it's over with and you already gave it your 100%, there's not a time to look back and say, I could have done better, I could have done better. Or the only thing you can do is just hope everything will be better and continue moving forward. And maybe one day those two broken pieces were meant to be broken apart instead of one union, or instead of how you wanted them to be.
Chris, you feel like sharing?
I can't really pinpoint a specific time where I was extremely unhappy, but I noticed that a lot of the times when I am unhappy, I'll try to find something that I can occupy myself with so I can just avoid that temporary unhappiness for the little while. But I mean, something that I realize is little by little, I just seem to keep getting unhappy, and I'll just find something else that's gonna make me feel better temporarily.
Distractions.
Different things. Rachel, if I can come back to you, because it's kind of strange. There's a similarity in my situation, what happened to me during a time when I was greatly unhappy, but it also led me to great depression and even contemplation of suicide. What did you do during that time to get little momentary happiness, if there was? At the end, you're saying nothing worked, but what were you trying to do? What became your sources of happiness, if you recall?
I didn't really have a specific source of happiness. I think I was subconsciously searching for one. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, and I didn't know where to find it. I was hopeless. I was weak. Everything discouraged me. I didn't have any drive, motivation. There was just so much change happening in my life. Like I said, I was leaving high school. I was entering this whole new world, college, and this person that I was so accustomed to was gone. I had to make so many changes, and I was on sensory overload. I didn't know how to react. I didn't know where to turn.
Right.
I didn't know where to find happiness.
Right.
So really there wasn't. I had to soul search, and it took me years to do that, to find something to get me back on my feet.
Right. My situation happened after I graduated college, and with my bachelor's in mechanical engineering. And I remember at the time the economy was not doing very well, so for engineers it was a very terrible time. And I graduated with very good grades. It was a good time at the time. I had a great time in college, but the reality came down to it is that here I am with a great degree, ready to attack the world in a sense. Now I have a bachelor's degree. I'm good to go, at least whether by grades or myself. I would consider myself somewhat smart from that aspect at the time, at least. And facing the reality that there were no jobs. There were just absolutely no jobs. And so I remember falling into, little by little, the depression mode, and I would look for whatever opportunity that would come along. I tried friends, and then friends little by little left, and people have moved out of town. All the students that we were together in the group, I remember the only thing it came down to, similar to Alvin in this case, is drinking and partying. And that's where it came down to. Okay, what are we doing tonight? And it's all of a sudden we're looking, it's whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, 8-day, we're out at the bar till 4 a.m., drinking and eating unhealthy, which also led to waking up later, not giving me enough time to even at that time start searching and for jobs. And so little by little, I remember I turned to these physical things to try to reach happiness, but deep down inside, every single day I'd wake up and go, I am very unhappy. And so, this leads us to a reality that if the purpose of life is happiness, there are people that are unhappy. And at some point in time, we all face this, including you're joining us. We all face this. We all face time of unhappiness. But we all turn to sources. What do you guys think? What sources do people turn to for happiness?
Drinking.
We mentioned some of them, right?
Drinking,
partying.
Other people.
Other people, friends. Bridget, you mentioned some friends.
Sports.
Friends, sports, TV. They watch and create realities for themselves, whether if it's from reading books or listening to music. They will put themselves in the shoes of somebody else when really they're not doing too well on earth. They're not doing too well here.
I feel like a lot of times people create like fairy tale worlds. Like, just for example, like a girl thinking that like her prince is gonna come on a white horse and save her, or like a man, like a man that needs to provide for his family, he's just gonna hit the lottery or something. Like, I feel like
a lot of times they look for a source of entertainment to keep them off of that. They'll pay attention to TV, they'll play sports, they'll find some type of video game, they'll do something, just like Jeremy said, as a distraction in a form of entertainment, just so then it can keep them partially happy even.
Mm-hmm. And they almost forget about their unhappiness when they're participating with groups and participating with other people. When they're playing a sport, you're not thinking about how sad you might be. You're gonna work on scoring the next goal in life.
Yep.
True. It's amazing when we look at these sources and many others. There's a reality behind all these sources. And the reality is they are sources that can satisfy at a certain moment in time. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a break. And when we return from break, we're going to look at not just sources, but also how we can satisfy ourselves. But in order to do that, we're going to have to break down what makes up a human being. When we come back, you're going to be surprised at what we're going to find. We'll take a break. Welcome back. Before the break, we were looking at the different sources of happiness. What we realized is that a lot of these sources mentioned are sources that can satisfy the body. The big question is, as human beings, are we just a body? What are we made up of? So what we're going to look at, there are a couple of things, a couple of evidence around us that indicate that we are not just a body. Okay? So for example, when we look at things like intelligence, when we look at things like consciousness, these are things that are intangible. But before we get into those, let's look at the tangible evidence of what makes up a human being. What's in front of us? What do you guys see? As a human being, when you look in the mirror, you look at me, or you look at each other, what are you seeing?
Eyes.
Eyes.
First thing is definitely the facial features, whether their smile, their eyes, the color of their eyes, their ears, their hair.
Thank you for
their
noticing.
Style.
Appreciate that.
Their style.
Notice everything.
Their fingers, their arms.
We obviously can see things like hands, legs, feet, hair, right? Things like that.
How about clothes and accessories? Could we say that's part of the body?
We can say these are the accessories or the physical appearances, but more of what makes up a human being. So first we're looking at the outside, and then we're going to see there's more. Actually, on the inside, what are we made up of on the inside? What do we have?
Organs.
Lungs.
Your brain, your heart.
Brain, heart, bones.
Blood.
Blood. There's blood that flows. Can we see these things? Well, okay, I guess if we cut ourselves, we
Sometimes,
can.
yeah. If you're a doctor, you can see
A
it.
doctor sees.
Surgeon.
Did you guys see that basketball player that had his whole leg sticking out?
Yeah. Oof. Yep.
Oh, we
We've seen
saw
that
some
one.
That's the bones right there.
disturbing, but yes, it's true. I guess we don't have to go that far to see it. We can just go, okay, there's something solid here. But thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for sharing that. So we obviously can see the physical evidence around us that we are made up of a body. Let's go to that intangible evidence, for example, of consciousness and intelligence. When we look at the body, when we're talking a body, okay, are there any other creatures in the world that are similar to us?
Well, I feel like the closest ones would be like monkeys. They're
Apes, actually.
Yeah.
Apes would be. So if we actually, scientists have shown genetically and through the DNA research and things like that, that we are very close to apes. Now the big question. If we are that close to apes, genetically, I think they say it's 98 or 99% or things like that. If we're that close, why are we so different? Are we different? First question is, are we different?
Absolutely.
How are we different?
I mean, maybe not so much in like physical appearance, but I mean, they have a lot more hair than us. Like that.
Because of what you do, you notice the hair. That's incredible.
But like, yeah, I mean, they're not as intelligent as us. Like, I mean, if they were, they would be doing things that we do, but they still live in the forest or jungles or, so.
Chris, you had a thought to your mind.
Well, I was just gonna make a joke. I was gonna say I don't know about so much more about the hair situation.
Oh my!
Chris has plenty
Did you
of
shave
hair.
this morning?
I just shaved about an hour ago.
Just disappears. Yeah, there is a reality. I think somebody asked me this question one time when I mentioned that the statistic or the number of how close we are to apes. And the person asked me, he said, would you ever trust a monkey or an ape or any kind of animal to perform open heart surgery? And I remember opening my eyes. I'm like, well, I guess can I even train an ape to do that? The reality is we are so close in DNA. Logically, they should be so close in consciousness, so close in intelligence. But are they? No. They are so far different from that. In fact, nobody all around us, we look in the world, we don't know the universe, but when we look in the world, nobody is as close to us, humans, in consciousness and intelligence. So if we were to put a mathematical equation to it, and just compare body to body similar to body, human body similar to animal body. When we look at consciousness and intelligence, nowhere near. So we label that, consciousness and intelligence, specifically to humans, we say a human soul. That's an intangible evidence that we have when we're looking at a human being. So according to this tangible and intangible evidence, we see that a human being is made up of
Human soul.
Body and soul.
Body and soul. By the way, that's not to say animals don't have souls. They have some form of consciousness and intelligence. They would have an animal soul. We have a human soul. Ours is definitely much more superior. So now the question to you guys. Okay, so we're dividing this of the makeup of the human being. Why is it important for us to know that we're made up of body and soul? Why is it important? Why can't we just go, I'm made up of a body?
Tell us, Bashar.
I would think that, if I'm just this, if I'm not just this, I would want to know more. Like, what am I if I'm not just a body?
You'd feel like you have more to live for. If you're not just like a body, it's like he said, he wants to know more. Maybe he'd want to live for more.
Mm-hmm.
He might have more to live for than we might have more to live for than just what we see.
Mm-hmm.
There's something inside that we can't see, we need to know about so that, we can live for it.
Well, maybe that'll just help us better understand what the purpose of life is.
Exactly. We are trying to figure out the purpose of life. And we determine that to be happiness. Now, if I am made up of body and soul, okay, I need to know what is the full potential of me reaching that happiness. Look at your presentations. What you see in the presentation, we're going to illustrate this in the presentation. What you see in the presentation is we are made up of body and soul. So, body plus soul equals 100% happiness potentially. We have the potential to reach 100% knowing that we are made up of body and soul. So, based on this evidence right now that we just mentioned, we are made up of body and soul. Look at the presentation. If we only focus on the body plus no soul, so body only, we can only reach 50% of our potential happiness. Does that make sense?
It does.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense.
So you guys see, if we are looking at only the sources of the body, what's the most we can reach?
50%.
50% of our happiness. What's the purpose of life? Happiness. So the purpose of life is happiness, and we're only reaching 50% of that. Are we complete? No. We are not complete. So we need to know if we are made up of body and soul, because then we can look at all the sources, not just limited sources.
Not just the work, the school.
Not just these things. In fact, what we're going to look at now in the presentation is if we were to only look at the body, and we're going to label some of the sources for the body, sources of happiness for the body, what happens? So look at your presentation. We're looking at the sources of the body. Remember, body only, so no soul, no sources for the soul happiness right now, only the body. Look at the categories of the body. We kind of taken 4 short categories, as you can see. We have the work and money, we have exercise, we have relationships, we have learning. So we're only going to focus on these 4 things and use it in the example. Now, take away work and money. If our potential is 50%, look at the results. Take away work and money. What do you see?
37.5.
37.5. Now, take away relationships with that. In many situations, it happens that a person's losing a job, they were dating somebody or getting to know somebody, and that person goes, or a relationship just ends. At what level of happiness is this person going?
A quarter.
25% happiness.
25% happiness. Now take away exercise along with that. Let's just carry it further. At that point in time, I remember during my time, when I didn't have work, at that time, I wasn't dating somebody. These are things that I put my sources in. And then, of course, who wants to work out? I didn't want to work out at that time. At what level was I going on?
12.5%.
12.5%. How can I have a smile on my face at 12.5%? Results? Look at the results. What would the results be?
Sadness. Anxiety.
Worry, possible depression, all things that can even lead to possible suicide. I didn't want to continue. Who would want to continue at very little happiness? In fact, what you see, people that focus only on the physical side, many famous people have committed suicide. They have all the resources, all the physical resources in the world that anybody could have. Yet they take away their life because of lack of something.
The sources are very limited.
Very limited. Now, let's look at the same example, but let's add the sources of the soul in it. Look at your presentation. So now let's take the same 4 categories that we divided into, and let's add the soul into it. We won't go into the source of the soul at the moment, but let's look at these things. So we have the soul plus the sources of the body what level can a person reach of happiness? 100%. From that 100%, take away work like we did last time. What level do we have?
87.5.
87.5. Take away the relationships.
75%.
75% happiness. In comparison to what? What was it before?
37, I think.
37.5?
25%. There's on your way to mathematics. That's great. Let's carry it even further. Let's take away the exercise. Let's take away the learning. A person that doesn't have any source of happiness for the body, yet has the sources of the happiness for the soul, what level are they operating at?
50%.
50%. Now I know personally several people that have passed on from this life because of a terminal illness. And I remember facing them, sitting with them face to face. And I would ask the question, how do you have a smile on your face? You and I both know you're not going to make it. And they used to stand and tell me, Bashar, because I am satisfying my soul. My body is too late, it's done. But my soul, I can still get happiness from that. It's a reality check if we look at it. So, I want you to tell, based on this, what would you recommend to the viewer? Based on what you have seen, give them a recommendation about the body and soul. What would you recommend? What would you tell the viewer to do?
For who's ever watching, I would like to just make everyone aware of their soul. And we all have one. It's what gets you out of bed in the morning. It's what will keep a smile on your face. Even if you have one pair of shoes and no job, at least you can get out of the bed in the morning and you can still be happy, and you can still make somebody else happy, and you can still work for that happiness that we all strive for. Whether if it's not with your money or your job or your education, it's just about being happy and waking up with a smile on your face.
Thank you, Jeremy. Rachel.
My recommendation to the viewers would be to really meditate and just think about the importance of a healthy soul. From my past experiences, had I been aware of my soul at the time, I think that the transition, that big change in my life would have gone a lot smoother. So now that I'm aware of the importance of a healthy soul, everything in my life has just been pure happiness. Even when I'm in a not so happy situation, I always manage to get through it, and I know that's due to my healthy soul.
What I would do, I would try to focus on not just satisfying the body, but satisfying the soul as well. Just so then, just in case anything was to happen physically to the body, or if I was to lose something that could make me unhappy with just my body alone, I would still have the soul that can keep me up, the soul that could keep me happy still. And that's what I would recommend, to satisfy the soul just as much as you satisfy the body.
Thank you, Chris. Alvin?
What I would say for the viewers, me personally, what I feel that I should have done if I knew back then what I would have done would be first to realize that we do have a soul, and we do need to keep our soul healthy, keep it moving, keep it flowing smoothly. And secondly, also realize all the harm that we could do to our body and soul together just from not having a job, or not eating healthy, or not exercising how we should. The thing that I would really mainly focus on would just be realizing how much you could actually damage your body and your soul.
Thank you. Bridget?
I learned that keeping your soul, just as happy as your body, you reach a higher level of happiness and fulfillment.
Thank you, Bridget. You know what? From my experience, I've noticed that when I focus on satisfying the soul just as much as the body, I realize I really do reach a higher level of happiness. The reality is this. Many of the sources that we mentioned here are sources that end, sources that have an ending. They are limited. Money can, we saw with the economy, it can disappear, can burn. It can the stock market can crash. We notice that jobs can be lost. Even us people, if we place our source of happiness in people, people die, unfortunately. Lives do end. All the sources around us have an ending. So the reality is we have to ask this question. Is there a source, or are there sources that don't end? We're not going to answer the question of are there sources for the soul, or what are the sources for the soul that satisfy the soul in terms of happiness now. We will answer those later. But is there a source that does not have an end? Is there an unlimited source of happiness? The question is, and we're going to leave you with these thoughts, how far would you go to get that source if there is a source? What would you do to get your hands on it? Some people refer to the source as God. So now the next question would be, does God exist? In fact, in the next episode, we're going to answer that question. What you're going to see is that's not the difficult question. The difficult questions, well, join us and you'll find out.